Hello everyone, and welcome to a bevel block addendum episode. Thanks to Dave Hanrahan for this one. He pointed out that Elephantine Island has bevel blocks. Now, I knew that there were some temples in the area, the Temple of Philae, that had bevel blocks, and I knew that some of these had been, repositioned and relocated because of the high dam. But today I wanted to look at some bevel blocks in their original locations in Egypt. And it's kind of rare to find them, and they're not usually as obvious as this. And I can't believe I skipped them over the first time. I'm sure I looked at Elephantine Island, but when you think of Elephantine Island, you think of things like this, like these boxes, which are pretty famous, and a lot of people have talked about these. But we're going to look at some other features of Elephantine Island here. We're going to do a quick overview of this place and take a look at some of the other structures at this site, because there's a lot more going on than just these, these fancy boxes that everybody talks about, which they are impressive, yes, but there's more going on here. I mean, even just from some of this in the background, you can see some blocks with square cutouts. So if you want to read up on the history of the island, you can. It's probably something better left to SGD. Same with the attribution of the oldest temple, and oldest god, Khnum. The creator god, where is it? I believe it is the divine potter, the Lord who have created things from himself. That's an interesting attribution, but we'll let other people that are more capable go through some of that stuff. But let's look at the physical evidence today. We'll just look at some of these stones and see what we can gather from just looking at some of this stuff. Okay, so this is the nilometer, and here right away you see bevel blocks. I can't believe I missed these. They're up toward the top. You can see they're pretty small margins, but they're there. And interesting course arrangement, right? Some of these, they're stacked that are pretty square and almost uniform. Then you have other rows that are very wide with interspersed narrower stones. You have odd square hole anomalies. How about that one? That's definitely a square hole anomaly. And this one up here as well, and I have a better angle that'll show that and prove that one. And obviously this giant one here. How about that? What is that about? For a decorative attachment? That's the only thing? What else could that be, right guys? I have no idea. That's wild. What's going on here with this broken stone? What could have been going on with that one? Just very interesting. And then the bevels start popping out more and more. Odd square indentations. This one's at a corner. Some of these trapezoidal, the angles aren't quite square. And then I believe you can see, I'm not sure if you call that polygonal or not, but that's kind of an odd shape for a stone. Very interesting construction method, right? And this is a nilometer, so it's going to have a lot of gauges and level markers for the river. And I'm going to say that a lot of these are original, but we're going to have other instances where they're clearly not original. For example, here, this lower element, this is all brick and mortar added to this stone, and there is an inset gauge. I believe it's carved from stone, but it's an inset piece that's mortared in to this little foundation for the current level of the river, right? And this one as well, a lower marker. But we're going to see this stairwell extends up inside, and we're going to see other markers. So the level of the river obviously went up a lot higher. So we'll see that in a second. Another angle of the exterior, better lighting. This is a very large photo, but I'm going to zoom in a second to show you all the processing on the surface. But even from back here, you can see the square hole anomalies, other maybe indentations, right, that start popping out. Maybe even a nub on this stone, and other little square indentations. So brace yourselves. Let's zoom in here. Okay, now definitely apparent, right guys? Square indentation, square indentation. Perhaps these. And let's look at this processing, right? This processing is really strange. It's very uniform. We might put this site in the processing marks album, the scratch marks, because is this by hand pick marks? It could be, yeah, just very well done. I don't know. And why some of them like this and other ones with the molded appearance, right? The bevel blocks are more molded. And these are also technically bevel blocks, so why the processing difference on the surface of these? Interesting, right? Just decorative to make it look better. It seems interspersed in some areas, so not too sure. Alright, let's zoom back out, and I believe that's all I can see in this photo. We'll go to a different angle, and I want to show you some other things here. Yeah, here, definitely square hole anomaly there. That is obviously, I mean, what could that be for? Maybe there was a matching one on the other side of the lintel for attaching a decorative cornice, maybe. That's the only thing I can think of. And this large one up here just keeps, it stands out. It's demanding attention. What's that about? Okay, so let's go inside now. We're going inside that stairwell and taking a left and going up. You can see these stairs look pretty eroded, a lot like some of the stairs at Petra, actually. So I'm going to say these are original carved into the maybe several blocks. I'd say probably 2 steps per block. Maybe this is 1 block and this is 1 block. Maybe this whole step. And you notice they all have the little the pick marks on the risers. The riser part of the tread is the flat part and the riser is the vertical part. So the risers have these, same pick marks. And if this is 2 stones, that's a very good joint. Or if that's 1 stone, that's a very interesting processing mark. Now, I'm going to say that these inset pieces here, these lighter stones, these are secondary. They seem to be carved into the blocks. We'll look at those in a different angle and a different picture. It's interesting that the execution is a stair step, isn't it? It's like half of an Andean cross, or like the other motifs that we've seen in other locations. It's practical execution, but also an interesting artistic motif. And perhaps these are legacies that have been put in for the eroded originals that are behind these. I don't know. We'd have to, see, pop them off, right, and see behind them. I'm not sure they're original. They're in too good condition. But let's look at some other angles, because I believe, I'm going to say these other ones, these square ones, are the originals. And here's one with really nice lighting. You can see the originals are the same cutout of the original blocks, and they go across the blocks. And even the little gauges, the marker levels, go across the blocks. So that's very well done, very precise. And just like a ruler, it has the longer and shorter markers. And here's a view from the top. This is very interesting, right? Here you can really see the bevel blocks. You can see maybe some of the square anomalies. You see a person's foot for scale. You see how these are brick and mortar and secondary, but maybe they go down into a block that's original, and that carving looks pretty old, just like the rest. So maybe this is a legacy of the original, and down here into the block, these insets are secondary elements, but legacies of the original elements. So if they originally were stair step, that's interesting. That's really interesting to me. And I'm sure a lot of you see these already, but let's point them out. The ties, the metal clamp. So the Greeks, the Egyptians, and the South Americans all knew about this same shared technology, this same construction method. So what does that imply? That implies that, at least shared knowledge between all 3 cultures. And Greek and Egyptian, sure, that's plausible, but to say that these 2 cultures had connections with South America, that's heresy. But the evidence in stone is the evidence in stone, and that's what we have to look at. So I find this to be a really interesting structure. Obviously, you can tell it goes along with a lot of the other structures we've been talking about. The wide margins here on these blocks, they're really eroded surfaces or just roughly processed surfaces. And the pockmarked or pitted interior surfaces, like some of the other sites. So, very interesting place. And there's more. There's more than just that one little spot, that little nilometer. There's other walls. And All these walls are bevel block, and you see the top of them. Those structures look like they could be South American if you didn't know any better. If you just hid the rest of the picture, you could say that was South American. Just an interesting little piece. And other parts, obviously bevel block, right? Foliage, more than likely square holes are underneath those. Square holes at corners. There's a lot going on at Elephantine Island. And a lot of it's done up to these giant old stones, these obvious bedrock boulder features, geological features. Some people would say these are ruins of older structures or, other more outlandish proposals, but the way these walls butt up against them, it looks like they were just incorporated geological features. So I don't think I'm going to take it that far. I'm just going to say geological features that were incorporated. Here you can see they incorporated, these for the whole lower foundation of the structure. It's a smart idea. All of it fits nice and tight together. So I'm going to say geological and much later. This is a really good picture. This is where you can really see the bevel blocks and the surface treatments. And we'll zoom in here and we can see scratch marks, the repeating scratch marks. Those are very uniform. And some of the square anomalies, right? This one, does that go through a stone? Does that light through there? It's hard to tell. These are very strange. The cuts are strange. The hieroglyphics, it could be contemporary with the structure or done later. You have to look at the weathering at the bottom of the structure because you figure the water comes up and down. But these are still in good shape, these striations, and these are still in pretty good shape here. So very, very likely contemporary with the building of the structure, these hieroglyphics, perhaps. Another picture from above, and you can see more of the temple of Khnum. We'll see some more pictures of that in a second. But very nicely done. And then you can see here the smaller blocks. This is the repair to keep all of it together from collapsing further. But I'm going to say all of this is the original structure. And it just incorporated all these giant boulders, and you would call these, erratics if you were Randall Carlson. The river has brought these erratics down, so they're just geological features from floods that have been incorporated into constructions. Another nice angle of that wall with the upper element. Very nice, the way it kind of flows with the wall, the wall flows with the bedrock and just conforms to the shapes very well of the little square anomalies in the stones. And then the temples, there's a lot going on at the temples. You see bevel blocks here, the same striations. You see lots of a lot of these square holes in the structure that are anomalous, right? Some of these were they had to be for attaching artistic elements, right? Other ones that go across the hieroglyphics like this, go across the faces even, I don't even know. And down here by the feet, I'm not sure. Some of these I am not sure about their attribution. So what is this saying about the hieroglyphics and the artistic, figurative executions here, the carvings? How do we reconcile all these holes in these structures? Some of them, like up here at the top, those may be for drainage for gutter systems, right? Clearly, maybe architectural pieces. Other ones, though, I'm really not sure. I really don't understand the original intent for all these holes. Again, some of these I really don't understand. I mean, if this was for a decorative piece that went in, an insert to complete the image, I could understand that. Sure. But then down here, yeah, here, you can see the hieroglyphics go over the square holes. But the square holes even go over the architectural element on the edge. And maybe even some of this stuff that looks like damage is actually square hole anomalies, like missing pieces of the structure. It's very odd, very strange. I mean, just very odd positions. If they had matching sets, it would make a lot more sense. If there was one in every single stone for lifting aids, that would make a lot more sense. But the way I see them, most of the time I don't see rhyme or reason for them to be there. Some I will agree they had practical reasons for being there. These three along the top for a canopy or for gutter drainage systems. I don't know how much drainage the top of this little thing would need, so maybe a canopy or artistic elements. But some of these other ones I really don't know, and it's funny that the hieroglyphics go over the holes, but then the holes even go over some of the architectural stuff. So, very odd. The square holes will need to be, it's a series all of its own. And here's some of the last remaining parts of the temple of Khnum, and even in it you see square anomalies. Like this is a missing corner. The rest of this looks mostly like damage. I'm not going to propose that any of these other parts are square holes, maybe here and maybe there, but the rest of this all looks like damage. But I will say that this one here looks like an original square hole anomaly that was not damage. So I don't know what that's about. Now, clearly they were bevel blocks. You can see the hard edge there, and they extend on all the blocks. And another angle, clearly bevel blocks. Very good lighting here. This piece here, this is some kind of capital. I'm not sure what this is. If this is clay, like pottery, or is this stone, a soft stone carving? I'm not sure. I don't know if it's the same kind of stone as what's in the background, though. And I'm not sure if it's the same quality either. But it's a very interesting element just sitting there. The reconstructed temple elements, you can see the darker patched areas are clearly the mortar fill areas to put the structure back together. I'm sure they went by the hieroglyphics for where the stones went. They matched up the hieroglyphics more than likely, and that's how they determined the alignment of all the stones, and then maybe from there they were able to piece together the rest of it. So I'm going to say this is probably a fairly faithful restoration, more than likely, but I'm not sure. You notice in the background, we'll zoom in on this and I'll show you another angle. Column drums, very large column drum segments with square holes in them. And here, very eroded, but I'm going to say these are fluted column segments. From the stuff we saw in Greece, these are heavily eroded, fluted columns. And the base is a reconstruction, reimagining. I'm not sure if that was anything like the original, but from what I see here on the left, these look like fluted columns that are heavily eroded, like we've seen in the ancient Greek sites. And the hieroglyphics over top, I'm not sure what time period to attribute. It ends down here at the more eroded part, or is it carved into that? I'm not sure. But it looks good condition compared to the rest of the column segment. So, not sure. The other column segments, here you see them. They're very large columns, very simple columns. Not sure what to make of these, but I'm pretty sure they all have square holes in the middle for aligning them. Perhaps some of them have square anomalies on the exteriors as well, but hard to find pictures. So that's pretty much all I could find of high quality photos of the site. There may be more. You could spend more time looking at it later, but just a nice little short video for you guys today. So when you see things like this, the more sensationalist guys will say ancient stone cutting and fancy things, and yeah, I'm going to say that too, but there's a lot more than that. Let's let's try to connect some of these hallmarks, because there's connections to be made, not just sensationalism. So we can start piecing some things together here, and I think already we found a compelling case for connection in architectural construction knowledge between South America and Greece and Egypt, and probably many other places. So that's at least what we have to propose at this point, and we could take that further and deeper into antiquity, but I think at least there had to have been a connection in classic Greco-Roman time periods and Egyptian time periods of connections between their buildings and the South American buildings. Now, this could be direct contact or just shared knowledge by trade, as in indirect contact, just over the course of the traveling of the route that the knowledge was passed on. So that's also to be considered, because we don't see direct copies of artistic motifs. We see similar artistic motifs, but they're not direct mirrored copies. For example, the metal ties. Some of them are hourglass shaped. Some of them are T-shaped. So there's different executions, but the thought process behind a lot of these things are the same. So for now, we'll just keep kind of a hesitant, skeptical, opinion of what we're seeing. But so far, I think that just at least a compelling case for shared knowledge across continents. So just a nice little short video for you guys today, and we'll try to do some more of these whenever I get some nice compelling information from you guys, or from watching some of the other videos. We can make some little update news video. But thank you guys for hanging out with me, and we'll get back to the bevel block list in a day or two, and hopefully we'll have that finished up and we'll start on a new adventure. Thank you guys.